Hi there. In this video, we will continue talking about the evidence and just to make a quick recap for what we covered in the previous lectures. First, we say in fraud examination, we need to differentiate between fraud examination and forensic accounting, and we need to see the relation with the auditing process. And then we say when we try to investigate or examine the fraud, we need to look at the corporate governance and see the different constituents in the corporate governance, starting from the board of directors, going down to the audit committee, the management, the internal auditor, and the external auditor. And then identify any red flags, either in the financial statements or in the operation itself. However, the red flags are not the final say about the existence in the fraudulent case, but the red flags are hints that can be taken seriously by the fraud examiner or the auditor. And for the red flag to become a good indicator for fraud, we need to find an evidence for that. And in the previous lecture, I was talking about the different types of evidence and how the evidence is located in the process of fraud examination. Evidence, by the way, it's not only documents, it could be interviewing. So I will talk today about making interview or invigilation by watching the recording of a camera, and this can be taken as an evidence. Documents are very good as well. Also some kind of analysis to the accounts, like the investment account. This can be a good evidence that can be taken also into the case. So with this in mind, let us go to our presentation and talk about the different types of evidence. Just before I start again, if you remember, we say for a fraud to happen, there should be three elements. They make the fraud triangle. The first one is the pressure or the incentive on the fraudster. The second one, the opportunity, which comes in weak internal control. And number three, justification or rationalization, where the person finds a good reason to steal. And the fraud itself, it goes through into three phases. The first one, as you can see it on the screen, the act of the fraud. And we need to look for evidence that can verify the act. The second one, concealment. It means coverage of the fraud, such as adjusting journal entry. And number three, conversion, where the fraudster sells out the stolen item, converted into cash, and shows up in his investment account. And here you can see there are several types of evidence that we will go through them in the coming slides. The first one is document. The second one is bank statement, credit card, investment statement. The third one, invigilation, where we have camera and we look through the operation from the recording of this camera. The fourth one is the interviewing and interrogation. And interviewing here, it takes the form of deposition, which is getting an evidence under a sworn oath. So it's not like interviewing for a job. It's a very legal and formal interviewing. Surveillance and covert operations. Confidential source and informants, like personal information, like personal assets. CTR, SAR, and FinCEN, which is the reporting of the company. If this company handles huge amount of cash. So if the company receives, for example, one collection from a customer more than $10,000 in cash, the company has to report to the government, filling out the form of CTR and SAR, and this goes to the FinCEN, which is the network that can investigate the amount of cash, because huge amount of cash can be a result of money laundering. So we have to check this one, like a cash transaction report. And also we need to check the emails that were going between the fraudster or the potential fraudster and the other people. We can also check the social media, data mining, and other evidences. So in this video, I'm going to go through each one of those evidence, and we try to briefly explain it. Before I go through this type of evidence, we need all the time to keep in mind that this evidence is good for which phase of the fraud. Is it good for the act or concealment or conversion or all of them? Because when the fraud examiner is preparing the working paper, the fraud examiner has to put in each phase of the fraudulent transaction the evidence that will support this phase. So for the act of fraud, we can see documents here. So the documents are good to cover any phase in the fraudulent transaction. The document is a good backbone if the fraudulent case is related to the financial statements or the financial data. So like invoices, checks, accounts, journal entries, all these documents are very helpful. Sometimes the document is more reliable than mere witnesses because the document doesn't make like two sayings or doesn't like to provide two statements. The document provides one statement, accurate number, but the eyewitness can provide ambiguous answers or unclear answers. So remember, the documents are very good evidence, especially if they are original documents. And they are good, especially in the financial crimes. Also, from the documents, we can find out the fingerprints of the person who made these documents if it's in handwriting. The next one is the statements, whether these statements comes from the bank or from credit card company or investment. They are good evidence for act and conversion. But the statement itself is not really good for concealment because it doesn't show me any coverage of the fraudulent case. The statement is a good clue to reflect the lifestyle of the owner of that statement. So for example, if you get the bank account, my bank account, you will see how my lifestyle is running, what kind of assets I have, what kind of expenses I spend, what kind of income I get. So the statements are good example of the lifestyle of the fraudster, and it can lead to something else. Of course, the statement will follow the money movement from where it's coming and where it's going, and every transaction in that statement can be scrutinized. It means the examiner can ask the bank or the credit card company for more details about this statement or this transaction. Invigilation, and here it's observation. When we observe something, it's a very good evidence for the act of the fraud. So remember here, invigilation is not in writing, it's just observation, but we can take it as an evidence as well. It shows the person or the invigilator what happened before the act of fraud, during the act of fraud, and after the act of fraud, and the changes in the pattern of the performance if the person had been asked to make deposition or interview. It helps to calculate how much money may be missing. So when we watch the operation, we can get a good evidence because this will be with the mere eye of the investigator and can get some facts that might be helpful in the fraudulent case. Here is a good example of invigilation. This is a statement that shows, like vending machine, where a person called Jem, this person has been working from 2003 to 2006. This person was collecting the cash from the vending machine for his personal pocket. And now we would like to examine this one. So we start looking at the deposit of the cash from the vending machine in the bank. And as you can see here, in the years prior the hiring of Jem in 2001 and 2002, the cash deposit in the bank was like in year 2001, $53,000. In year 2002, $49,511. So this can tell you the range of the deposit. When Jim start working, then the amount of the deposit start to decline. So in 2003, it became $51,958 because it's his first year. He doesn't know how to steal, but now he learned the technique, and you can see in 2004, the amount of the deposit from the vending machine into the bank account decreased to 47,000. Then in 2005, 39, in 2006, 29, and you can see here from the report the decrease in the deposit, which means Jim might be taking something. There might be bad sales, it could be. But when Jim had left the job in 2007, the deposit from the vending machine into the bank account jumped up into 51,630, which similar to the years before the higher time of the Jim. So the invigilation of such a report can make a good evidence to see that Jim is stealing this one. If I combine this report with the personal bank account of Jim, I might make a correlation between them. Then once we make the invigilation, we can also do something. It's not in writing, but we can make it in verbal, like interviewing and interrogation. As I said, the interviewing can give evidence to the examiner about the act, the concealment, and the conversion. And it's under a sworn oath, so the person has to say the truth, and it could be helpful to find other evidence. Surveillance and convert operation, and this is conducted by private investigator or law enforcement, where they can put cameras and start watching. And this will collect evidence similar to the invigilation about the act of the fraud. It doesn't provide more about concealment or conversion, but how the act of the fraud happened and who was involved in this act, like the conspirators, and whether it's one person or multiple, and how the operation is conducted. Then we can see how the money can be recovered, fixed point and mobile surveillance. So whether we can put one camera or multiple camera that can shows up the act of the fraud. So here we can see that the evidence can be in writing, like documents, statements, or the evidence can be verbal, like interviewing, invigilation, and surveillance. Confidential source of informants. Here, the sources have no criminal involvement in the case, like whistleblower. The whistleblower can tell you about something had happened, but he has no relation with the criminal himself. Informants typically have direct or indirect role in the criminal activities. Sources and informants are usually confidential. And as I said, most of the company, they have hotlines for whistleblower to report any fraudulent act with promise to keep their confidentiality, so they don't disclose who is the whistleblower. We evaluate the motive of sources and informants. When we get a phone call from the individual about something happened, we need to try to find an answer why this person is reporting and what is the impact on that person, because maybe this person was spreading a rumor, something is not true, and maybe this person was trying, for example, to take revenge from his boss, so he reported as if his boss made a criminal act. So we have to check the reliability and the validity of the information. As I mentioned earlier, if there is any huge amount of cash transactions, the company has to report it by completing the SAR reports and submit it to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So the FinCEN can trace the cash from the source to the destination to see if the cash is coming from legitimate source or it comes from money laundering. Also, good evidence nowadays is to check the emails, is to check the social media contact, is to check any text message. So we usually take the iPhone or the smartphone of the criminal and go through all the communication that has been going between the criminal and the other people on social media. We can also check the Instagram, the Facebook, the Twitter, to see whom the criminal has some communication with before the act and after the act, and the hints that the criminal might use in his social media communication. We can also check the big data or data mining to see the information about the criminal person. And this can be taken from the different databases around the world. So if the person has different connection in another country, with the database and the big data can help us to find those connections. We can also check the data mining tools to get some insights about the personal life of the criminal. The last point in the evidence, other evidences. And this is like taking the fingerprint of the different individuals in the organization, taking some phony documents that might be helpful to give us hints. We can take like forged signature, because if the criminal was trying to forge the signature, then this can be a helpful hint for us to investigate it about that person and why he was forging the signature of another one. A typewriter's unique identifier, we can check the address book, the phone numbers, to see if there is any linkage between the fraudster and other individual outside the organization. Dates and times, they provide evidence about how the act was made, and medical condition also can provide insights into the financial pressure. As I said, the financial pressure on certain individuals due to family needs have the highest importance in the fraud triangle, because this will push the person to steal to meet some ethical needs of his family. And this has the strongest pressure, by the way. So from this brief overview, we can tell that evidence, it's more than documents. It can go to verbal, it can go to observation, inspection, and all of them are valid evidence. The evidence source is specific to concealment, like making altered documents, and one of them is the passport. And this is the reason we see year after year more sophistication technique in making passport, because the person can hide his identity by making a fictitious passport. Also, concealment can happen in the financial records, either entries or ledger or adjustment journal or tax returns. So the tax returns also can be a good document to conceal the fraudulent act. The altered documents, where the person can hide the original document and try to make a photocopy that has all the changes he wants to show, and saying that the original document had been lost for some reasons. So altering the accounting books to provide evidence of the concealment, and this can be a good evidence. And qualified professionals should examine documents in questions. What does it mean? When we check and alter documents, it's not the auditor. It's usually some people from the forensic lab that they come with their tools and techniques to check the changes that have been happened to the original document and how they have been made. And by the way, this could happen on the literal exact documents or the digital documents. So this can show how we can make it. A general ledger, journal entry, and reconciling items, we check usually the payment, the receipt, the adjustment that we can make it for the non-cash transaction, like depreciation, like warranty expense. All these items can be made without having cash involved, and this can be a manipulation of the numbers. Usually these kind of fraudulent acts are made by the management to dress up the financial statement for the sake of getting bonus or incentive at the end of the year. A tax return can be correlated with activity in bank accounts and corporate books. So either individuals or organization, they try to manipulate the taxable income to pay less tax and maximize their income. And we usually check here, both of them, the tax report against the bank statement and the financial records. It may provide evidence of involvement in business not disclosed by the target, and the amounts and type of deduction might raise questions regarding the business operation. So remember here, the tax return is a good evidence for both individuals and organization. Evidence source is specific to conversion, and this is very good one, because once the act of the fraud is happened and covered in the record, then the next step, the person will try to convert it into cash, because it's very hard to identify the source of cash. So the conversion part has to be investigated quickly. Once we find out that this person has somehow a stolen asset, and we don't know where is this asset. Usually the hidden asset and the unknown source of income are a good example of the conversion process, that these assets have been converted or hidden somewhere. Concealed offshore financial accounts, transactions, and loan, and this is very good approach of converting the cash, that transferring the money to a sham company, unrealistic company offshore. And somebody on the other country will take the cash and then circulate it back to the original person in the same country, because once the cash goes out or the transfer goes outside the border of the country, it will be hard to bring it back. And usually the big fraudster, they have multiple accounts internationally, so they can convert the amount stolen into small portions and send it to their accounts. And after sometimes they buy real estates on or other assets in the other countries and bring them back into cash to be transferred to their original country. This is a good loop that has been used in money laundering on how the person can get the cash, convert it into asset, and convert it back to cash and comes to his account as a clean cash. Indirect methods of income reconstruction, database source of information. These are different ways of conversion. We have to check the relevance, how the information or the evidence can make a decision in the user's mind, how the evidence is reliable and can showcase in the court, and how accurate it is, the validity. Locating hidden asset and unknown source of income, it can be hidden through different methods. Either we hide it, as I said, into bank account, investment account, purchasing assets like real estate or jewelry or expensive items. Examine tax return and financial record for more documents. Income may be diverted away from known account to unknown account, such as sham companies offshore. Concealed offshore financial accounts. This is very popular way of hiding the information about any fraudulent amount by sending them to offshore financial accounts. Indirect method of income construction, here financial profiling, where we try to reconstruct the income. So for example, if the person got the cash, he can buy shares and bonds of another company and put the shares and bonds under his wife's name or one of his relatives' name. And this is what we call it by financial profiling. So he doesn't show the ownership of all the amount under his name. Also, large amount of legwork required in developing source of information. Yes, it is. And we can use different methods here to search for the converted amount, like the network method, lifestyle probe, bank record. The network methods, where we use the accounting equation, assets equal liability plus owner's equity, and then we try to see the owner's equity by subtracting the liability from the assets. We examine how much is the net worth happened to the fraudster from one year to the other and try to find evidence for this change. The next point, the net worth methods. And here we see all the assets of the fraudster, all the liabilities of the fraudster, and then how much is the net worth in his capital. So this can give us a good overview of the different types of evidence that the fraud examiner should look for, either verbal, like interviewing, invigilation, observation, inspection of document, or it could be written, like invoices, like bank statements, and so on. Then we need to see how the item was concealed through adjustments in the journal entry and the accounting record, how it was converted through transfers from the local bank into offshore banks. And those can be good tools to convert the amount of cash. I hope you find this presentation useful, and I will continue the discussion about the evidence in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.